Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's doing well. So today we're going to be talking a lot of AC/DC. We're going to be going through our picks for our 5 favorite AC/DC records. And to help me in that endeavor is Martin Popoff. How are you, man?
Hey, doing okay, Hack. Thanks for having me. Very cool.
Yeah, AC/DC. I know it's one of your personal favorites, and I think, I mean, AC/DC is one of those bands. They have that universal appeal. Everybody likes AC/DC, or
Yeah.
you could safely say to some extent they like AC/DC.
Yeah.
You know, it's just they have that universal appeal.
Yeah. It is odd. You're right. It's one of these bands you don't hear people say, I hate those guys. Kind of like
Yeah,
ZZ Top, one of my other favorite bands, or Deep. I suppose there's a number of them. Deep Purple, Judas Priest. There's a lot of big bands, I suppose, like that. But yeah, I mean, AC/DC is just such a massive part of pop culture fabric now, right?
yeah. I mean, they've been around since man, what 74? Is that
Pretty
about
much.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe even
Yeah,
73. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I just want to say hello to a few people that popped in. JP Page 2, welcome. Is there a bad AC/DC album? He asks. My top 5 is all of them. Yeah, you can, you know what? Yeah. Simon Williams is in here. Papa Blue, John the Dark Wizard, Gary Holt, Bass Playa 77. How are you? Yeah.
Excellent.
Let There Be Rock. John the Dark Wizard, Let There Be Rock's number 1. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, I was saying to you, I went back and I listened to the entire catalog. I mean, you know, over the last couple of weeks, and some new appreciation for some records that, you know, in memory you think, oh, that was kind of good. And then you listen to it again, maybe with fresh ears or a little, you know, maybe a little different perspective. And you find that he's like things maybe a little more than you thought you did. And then your order starts to switch around again. And the one thing, you know, I guess if anybody was to criticize AC/DC, it's that they make the same record over and over again. But if you listen to some of their more recent stuff, like, you know, Black Ice, Rock or Bust, you know, they were starting to do some pretty interesting harmonies on the guitars, some slightly different voicings. Some songs were dangerously approaching pop, you know. So there is a little bit of variation. There is some development there. It's not just, you know, the you know, the big 3 chord thing. I mean, they did evolve quite a bit in some of their songs. And in one particular song that I'm going to mention, I'm going to go on about, which it was from a record they did back in the 90s. I mean, that's got some pretty not, I won't say complex, but some pretty involved guitar work and a really great arrangement, and something that you would not expect to come from AC/DC. So they're not 100%, you know, 3 chord predictable. You know, what do you think, what do you think, Martin?
Well, you know, I think they have quite a bit of different productions. And then, you know, there is a certain amount of variety across everything. I mean, I think the arrangements are generally cast in stone. But, you know, they have the bluesy ballads or the, you know, the other kinds of ballads. They have the super up tempo stuff. They have the stuff that stops and starts. They have the stuff with the standard quote unquote AC/DC beats. So I think there's quite a bit of variety there. You know, we've only had 2 lead singers, I suppose. But yeah, I would say the productions are quite different. And you know, you've got at least these 10 clumps of different kinds of songs anyways. So no,
Yeah,
I think there's a fair bit of variety there. And of course, you know, you always got to mention AC/DC and Motorhead at the same time when you do this, right? Or the Rolling Stones, actually, for that matter. You know, bands that have, you know, certain trademarks that they use a lot. And I guess AC/DC does that. So
yeah. So well, let's get started here. So what are you picking for number 5, Martin?
Okay, so for number 5, I'm going with The Razor's Edge.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so 1990, September 21st, 1990. It's The Razor's Edge with no apostrophe, which is really annoying. There's a there's a CD version of it. Um,
Right.
This album, what I like about this album is that it just feels a little bit like they were a little down in their dumps across, 3 albums in a row that didn't do that great and Blow Up Your Video. They sort of had their tail between their legs, but this is produced by Bruce Fairbairn, who we lost in 1999. He died.
Yeah.
It's recorded in Dublin and then in Vancouver at Little Mountain. So it really has this sort of Little Mountain feel to it, I think. And it just seems like they're coming out all guns blazing, trying harder. To make an album to come back on top, and I just love the kind of the winner feel of the thing, and I like the pretty the real razor's edge, quote unquote, on the drumming sound that you get out of Chris Slade. It's got a very techy, sort of almost electronic drum sound, or sampled drum sound, I suppose, on maybe the bass and the snare. And it's got some huge songs on it. Thunderstruck, of course, is one of their top probably 3 or 4 anthems ever.
Yeah.
Love the darkness of the Razor's Edge. Money Talks was kind of like a charming poppy one that was pretty cool. Are You Ready is a song that now you hear in sports stadiums with the whole "Are you ready?" And then it kicks off. So I just really like the kind of winner attitude with this, and they've had some problems. Malcolm had missed some touring dates because of alcoholism. Brian was kind of going through a divorce and getting that all cleared up. One of the interesting things about this record is that Brian doesn't write any lyrics on it because he was preoccupied with his divorce. So every single song credit is Angus and Malcolm on it. So I just like that they came back and it actually worked. They actually did succeed. This album went 5 times platinum.
Yeah.
After 3 platinums in a row. So I just always had a soft spot for it. Right at sort of the end of the hair metal thing, AC/DC coming back and triumphing, and all of a sudden they're a huge band again. And I was caught up in the excitement of all that. So number 5, Razor's Edge.
Yeah, that's a great record. That definitely was a rebirth for them at that point when they really, really needed it,
Yeah.
And that intro to Thunderstruck is one of those things that if you try to play that on the guitar, like, man, it's just it's a series of hammers and pull-offs. But as someone who's tried to play that, man, you got to put your hand in ice after a while. It's really it's challenging to say the least. But great record. So for my number 5, this was the first AC/DC record I ever bought. Okay, and I mean, as a kid, I was, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12 or something, and it was, I basically, well, no, I must have been at least 12, just going from the year of it. But anyways, but based on just the cover, because the cover looked really cool. These guys look like they were on fire. I'm talking about Let There Be Rock. Okay. Man, that. I mean, I like I said, I went and re-listened to all their stuff again. I mean, this sounded raw when I first heard it. It sounds even more raw now. This record sounds, that's it. This record literally sounds like they went into a studio. You can even hear the tape machines fire up on this. It's like they just went in a studio, they turned the amps up to 10, and then they just played the songs, and Bon Scott is screaming his ass off to try to be heard over the whole din. I don't know, man. It doesn't sound like to me that this was just like recorded right off the floor. Doesn't sound like there was any kind of overdubs on it. It's about the rawest sounding record I think I've ever heard. Which kind of, I don't know if you recall this, but back in that time in '77, when they first started to go out to England, they got sort of adopted with the punk crowd, and I think the rawness of this record, that's probably one of the reasons why, because there's so no frills and bare bones that they kind of fell within that early, that punk, umbrella at the time. But, is produced like a lot of their records with Harry Vanda and the older brother, George Young. Yeah, like I don't think there's any overdubs on this. It's just straight no frills heavy guitar. Now, one thing that I do notice, one of the guitars, it's got a little bit of that bumblebee kind of fizz going on, right? One of them sounds good. One of them has that little fizzy bumblebee thing. So I wish, I mean, I don't know why they didn't EQ that out of the mix, because for me, that this album would sound a lot better if the guitar, that other guitar sound was fixed or was a little bit blended in a little bit better with the mix. That's my that would be my criticism of the record, is that sound, because the energy of it is overpowering. I mean, Overdose, man, like what a song. It's I mean, the songs are so raw, so bare bones, no frills. I wish they just touched up the sounds a little bit on the guitars and made it sound a little bit better. But for overall energy alone, let it be rock, or let there be rock, is incredible.
Yeah, and that was their mission with this, is to have it sound way more powerful. They were starting to like not appreciate their old stuff in terms of they thought it was a little bit too sparse and a little bit too wimpy. And on this one, they definitely wanted to power up on the guitars. And just to address that punk thing, I think a few ads and label things kind of made them look a little punky, and so it was more like the label pushing it gently in that direction. But you do have this pretty punky sounding name of the band, AC/DC. You do have the lightning bolt. You do have the fact that they're from Australia, and they're dressing sort of really like workmanlike, like not flashy at all. So they're
Yeah.
obviously not like a big, they're not Rick Wakeman in any way, of course. Their hair's a little long, but they're small guys, so they kind of look punky, and they got kind of like punky scowls on their faces. So all these things add up. And as you correctly mentioned, Hack, the whole idea of how simple it all sounded, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, these are, it was a little interesting thing to see them a part of the punk thing. All right, so my number 4, I'm going with Back in Black. Love Back in Black. Loved it when it came out. Obviously, it was a universally received album, 25 times platinum in the States, diamond in Canada. Mutt Lange has produced it, but he's not sounding like the later Mutt Lange yet. But he's not sounding like Highway to Hell either. This has got a really kind of warm, pillowy, billowy sound to it. It's quite analog feeling. I haven't rated it higher because there are a few songs on here I'm not that crazy about. Let's see. Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, never really liked very much. Shoot to Thrill and You Shook Me All Night Long, I remember as a kid thinking those were like a little bit too poppy.
Mm-hmm.
And this didn't feel like a particularly heavy album anyways. I mean, Hell's Bells was pretty heavy on it. But yeah, you can't fault, I mean, one of the greatest selling albums of all time, and it's classic. And just to see the band come back, this is July 25th, 1980. Bon Scott has just died really not that long ago. It's recorded in Compass Point, Bahamas, which doesn't really feel like a Compass Point Bahamas sort of album. But
No.
there's your embossed, right, that had it on it. So there you go. I mean, there's not much more to say about Back in Black. Everybody knows everything about it, but just a great album, but a little relaxed, not as relaxed as For Those About to Rock, but it's leaning in that direction. Totally different album from Highway to Hell, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and incredible that they came out with something that good under the circumstances. I mean, they just lost their lead singer, and Angus and Malcolm get together, and then because they wrote all the songs on that record, and they just get together and they put that together, and and Brian comes in and knocks it out of the park. I mean, it's one of those things that's just a one in a million, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's neat. I forgot about this, but you get the Atlantic logo, which is the same usual Atlantic logo, right?
Right.
But it's in custom colors for AC/DC, right? They've done it in the silver and the black for this record, because it's not usually that color, right? So it's kind of cool.
Cool. So, yeah, my number 4, and this one kind of surprised me, and it took the place of another record. But upon listening to everything again, I got a new appreciation for this album. I'm talking about "Blow Up Your Video."
Wow, that's surprising. That's contrarian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, they brought back. Yep, they brought back George Young and Harry Vanda for this record. This record, I know that the big takeoff rebirth of theirs was, as you mentioned, Razor's
Razor's
Edge,
Edge.
but
Yeah.
this I thought this record was pretty damn good too. It's the last album they did with Simon Wright. This was the point where Malcolm was really having issues with alcoholism, and they were doing I think it was a Monsters of Rock, and they had to bring in Steve Young to play guitar for him. The album did really well. It's platinum in the U.S. It's a really from it's just a really good collection of songs. I mean, when I listened to it, it's like there were so many songs on this record that I really loved. Go Zone, Mean Streak, but getting back to that thing about some maybe you know ACDC being a little more versatile than usual. I mean, the song that my favorite song on this record, and actually one of my favorite ACDC songs, just because it's a little bit different but so cool, is I love the song "Two's Up." That's as close to a ballad, I guess. So, because there's one part that is kind of ballady, but then it goes up tempo. But some of the guitar parts on that, the interweaving of the instruments, the arrangement of it, the verse, and then the chorus. I think it's a damn good song, and it's something that you probably wouldn't expect, from ACDC. They're hitting a third gear there, if you will. And yeah, I love the tune. I like the production on the record too. It's to my ears, it's a lively production. It's pretty open sounding. The instruments are placed very very well. You can hear everything nicely. Nothing is overpowering. Just it's I guess part of the charm of that record is maybe just them getting back together with their original production team. That might have fired them up a little bit, because there's some really good songs on this record. And yeah, that's my number 4, "Blow Up Your Video," which surprised the hell out of me that I dug it as much as I did.
Surprises me too. I'd have it pretty low on my list, actually. I'd have, well, actually, I'll just say that as a little side trip. I mean, I would have low on my list. Unfortunately, it really bummed me out, but I did not like Rock or Bust at all. I'm not a big Blow Up Your Video fan. And just so people remember, this is how the band started. Or yeah, this is right. This is how the band started. That's your Australian High Voltage
Wow.
in early 75. That's your Australian TNT from late 75. And then there's your Australian Dirty Deeds from 76. There's your picture of the guys on the back, right? So that's how they started out. And then we got a mix and match version for our High Voltage, and a
Yeah.
mix and match version for our Dirty Deeds. But no, I would have Blow Up Your Video low, and I would definitely put the band's very first album pretty low. The Australian High Voltage, big difference from our High Voltage, right? But my number 3, I am going with Flick of the Switch. Love Flick of the Switch. This is a super heavy album. I always call it their Black Sabbath Born Again, because I think it's pretty brutal. They went back to a self-production after losing patience with Mutt Lange, and not really being happy with the sound that they got on For Those About to Rock. There's your For Those About to Rock. And I just love how heavy this is, and how raw, and yet it's a pretty good production. But it's just, I think it's the band's heaviest album ever, with this House is on Fire, Flick of the Switch, like these high up tempo, high energy, super electrocuted songs, Brain Shake, Badlands, Bedlam in Belgium, like which is a little more melodic, but still really giving her. Guns for Hire, I really love. I love Landslide. I mean, everything on here. This literally, it's the only reason it's not higher is it's lacking the absolute sort of weird magic of Bond, right? But other than that, this has always been my favorite Brian album, and nothing even comes close. So I have a pretty big gulf between my 4 Back in Black and my 3 with Flick of the Switch. But yeah, just love this album to death. I just think it's the real bad boy of the catalog. I think it's just really given her the whole time. It's a good drinking and partying and Friday night album, and it's Take No Prisoners, and I love that it's a self-produced record. So there you go. What else did I have here? So this went platinum, as did Fly on the Wall, as did Blow Up Your Video. This came out August 15th, 83, and it was also made at Compass Point. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a pretty contrarian pick. That's a record that doesn't get a lot of love.
I suppose. I've heard, on and off. I don't think people rate it too lowly, but yeah, I'm surprised it's not higher for most people. I know Tim and I bond over that fact that we just love that album. Like it might be his favorite AC/DC for all I know, but he totally loves it too.
Yeah, it's not a bad record. It's okay. It's better than Fly on the Wall for sure, and it's better than what's the other one that I don't like? Stiff Upper Lip.
Right.
Did not like that record at all. But yeah, it's in there. It's in the top 10 for me anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so my number 3, and this is kind of a no brainer, and on most people's lists. But my number 3 is here. Let me do the cool graphic thing since I worked it out. Gotta have some production value in this thing. All right, so here's my number 3.
Right.
For those about to rock, I mean, they were in a good.
Here, I'll continue with the analog production values while you're talking.
Yeah. They were in a good rough spot, meaning they had to follow up the second biggest selling album in history. And I think that's a pretty damn good effort. I mean, it's on its own. Back in Black aside, it is a good record that can definitely stand up on its own. Mutt Lange again. This was the record that I think they wore them out with Mutt, because their complaint was he was taking so long to get his sounds that they were just losing the energy and the enthusiasm of the tracks, and they didn't have that spontaneous thing going on. But I mean, that album again, as a follow-up, did quite well, 4 times platinum in the US. And there's some really, really good songs on there. For me, the standouts, Evil Walks is one of my favorite songs. There's Let's Get It Up is great. Breaking the Rules, Night of the Long Knives, especially Breaking the Rules. Again, guitar parts on that. There's a little bit of a departure, of the straight ahead 3-chord bang, bang, bang. And some of the guitar parts on that are just fantastic. The drum sounds. One thing with Mutt stuff is the drum sounds, especially on Back in Black in this one. The drum sounds and the guitar sounds are just like they're the sounds that well, speaking of as a guitar player, those are the guitar tones that you're always chasing. Is that because they're just so perfect, just the right amount of overdrive, just the right amount of breakup. And warm. You get that nice warmness, but still the definition. Like, those are the guitar tones that people spend their entire lives chasing down, and the guitars on this and the drums too. Those specifically the two that combined sound great on this record, and it is a good collection of songs. It is a good collection of songs. So yeah, that's my number 3 for those about to rock.
Cool. Yeah, I just remember as a kid being a little disappointed that it seemed like a weak tea version of Back in Black. It was Back in Black Part 2, and then it was just like a little more laid back, a little more sparse, a little more melodic, slower. It seemed as well, just missing a little bit of the rawness, but it would still be pretty high up my list as well. All right, my number 2. And this I've kind of gone back and forth on. I've often called this my number 1 favorite AC/DC album, but I'll go with number 2. I
Powerage.
really believe it is not my number two. Powerage, May 5th, 1978. Harry Vanda, George Young producing, recorded at Albert in Sydney. So this is your pure Australia album. The awesome band shot on the back, right? Looking like punks, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
right? But yeah, my memory of this is the old buying this copy as a new release as a kid. Mine's the red vinyl one, right?
Mm.
And riding it home on a hot summer day, couple miles home on a really hot summer day up a steep hill with it strapped to the back of my bike, hoping it wouldn't melt by the time I got home, so going really fast. But I remember as a kid also being quite horrified with Rock and Roll Damnation when we first heard it, because it was an advanced single and it was quite mellow. It was way mellower than anything on Let There Be Rock. And it's got maracas and the hand claps, and it's kind of like a melodic thing. So we thought, oh dear, is this going to be a pretty mellow album? And it kind of is a bit of a mellow album. It's the one that I call kind of their Southern rock album. It's got some really sort of things where the drums are sitting like right out of the whole thing. It's got some really simple songs that are still heavy, like You're Kicked in the Teeth, and up to My Neck and You. It's got Sin City, which is kind of like their Hell's Bells on this one. I love Rock and Roll Damnation now, but I love the I like the more laid back Southern rocky kind of things on here, like Down Payment Blues, What's Next to the Moon, Gone Shooting. Like all three of those are actually kind of mellow. They take a long time to get going,
Yeah.
but it's all kind of simple on here. Let There Be Rock is the first AC/DC album I ever got, and then I think I got a high voltage after that. And we knew, even as kids, I would have been 15 when this came out. We knew that this was a mellower album than Let There Be Rock, but it quickly became one that I liked more. It just seemed more charming and more like a big hug, rather than just kind of like cold and hoodlumish. So yeah, I really love all the songs on here, and I like the fact that it's simple and it's not all that heavy. So there you go, Powerage.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's definitely an honorable mention for me.
Okay.
My number two is would be most people's top five. Some would probably be a lot of people's number ones, but for me, it came in at number two. And talking about Highway to Hell.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, what can you say about Highway to Hell? It's last record with Bon, unfortunately. The last record with Bon. Whoops, let me get rid of that. And the first record with Mutt Lange. And after a failed attempt at recording with Eddie Kramer, who they hated, I think they called him a prat. Yeah, so they got rid of Eddie Kramer, and just by luck, their manager at the time knew who Mutt was and said, "You got to work with these guys." And I also read that Bon at this point in their career was kind of looking to change producers as well, because he didn't think they could go to the next level with using George Young and Harry. They wanted to move to the next level. And if you listen to the difference between, say, this record and the previous ones, the songs are a lot more hooky, more concise, a little more ear friendly, radio friendly, however you want to put it. And I think this is Bond's vocals, singing wise. I think this is his best performance. Unlike something like Let There Be Rock, where it's just a matter of him screaming everything over top of the guitars, he's actually singing on this record. You hear some dynamic, some character in his voice. Because, I mean, the same thing can be said of Brian Johnson. When these guys aren't belting, they actually have nice sounding voices. They're not just straight belters. And so I for that reason, that's another big plus for me. I'm just looking at my notes here. Songs are tighter, more concise. And this is the first time that they spent more than a couple of weeks in a studio. I think it was a 3 months to record this. The album is just chock full of some of their best riffs. I mean, the title cut, Girls Got Rhythm, Shotgun and Flames, If You Want Blood, Touch Too Much is a great song. It's just a really, really good record with some really great performances, and it sounds good. You know, the guitars, they're they sound good. It's a very light overdrive on the guitars, but it works. The drums sound good. The groove is there. It's a nice open sounding production. You know, it's Mutt Lange, man. What can you say? Yeah, 1979 came out, and I have somewhere I can't find it. Well, the chart rankings if or the sales if it was platinum or not. I can't find that.
Yeah, 7 times platinum in the States, 2
Okay.
times platinum in Canada, 5 times platinum in Australia.
Yeah, so did quite well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, my number one is the one you just talked about, Highway to Hell.
There you go.
Yeah, just love this album to death. Definitely got this as a new release also in my hometown of Trail, BC. I remember bringing this home one nice summer day. Just had to check here to make sure. July 27th. Yes, I do remember it as a summer day. I had a cousin over that day and we played it. But what I love about this is, okay, so first of all, Mutt Lange is not really that known a quantity at this place. At this time, he's done City Boy. I can't remember what other things he's done. But he would do also the Boomtown Rats album around this time. You know, this to me sounds a little more like, or High and Dry sounds a little more like this. You know, and moving into Back in Black, he totally changes his sound. I don't think Back in Black sounds anything like this.
No, it doesn't.
I don't think, and I guess I do think For Those About to Rock sounds like Back in Black, but it's even softer and more pillowy. And none of them sound like Pyromania, and none of them sound like Hysteria, right? So Mutt just does a good production job on this, a good solid production job with high fidelity, great mids, you know, enough bottom end, but not crazy on the bottom end, super good highs. But what I love about this album is, I would say my top 2 AC/DC songs of all time are on here, and that's Walk All Over You and Touch Too Much. In my top 6 or 7, included in that would be the If You Want Blood, You've Got It. Don't know why. It's just a poppy, simple, semi-heavy, mid-pace song. Just love it to death, though. Although Walk All Over You and Touch Too Much, I consider pretty heavy. Beating Around the Bush, I also is one of my favorite songs. You know, not a massive fan of Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, Shot Down in Flames. I mean, I love them, you know, to death. I mean, it's in my top album, but those songs probably wouldn't make my top 20, I would say, with AC/DC. But yeah, I just think it's got great variety to it, and you hit the nail on the head, Hack. Like, it just sounds like a way more professional band.
Yeah.
It's not the band doing the crazy loud screechy stuff of Let There Be Rock. It's not the band doing the kind of simple, downwound, almost too casual Powerage. It's not the band doing the really simple, kind of almost like adolescent and fun and goofy, almost, you know, preceding stuff, the Dirty Deeds, you know, high voltage TNT stuff. It's just everything sounds like a really well put together song. A lot of variety, a lot of different speeds. You got Night Prowler at the end. You've got Love Hungry Man. You also got a little bit of that Southern rock feel of Powerage on this, right? You know, Get It Hot is kind of a simple and poppy song. Shot Down in Flames is that mid-paced, you know, mid-level AC/DC. But yeah, that trio ending side 1, Walk All Over You, Touch Too Much, Beating Around the Bush. That's why it has to be my number 1. And then, like I say, I love If You Want Blood as well. So this one has gone back and forth with Powerage with me as my favorite AC/DC. But yeah, pretty wild. 1979, right? It's a weird year in rock and roll history to have something like this. But this is just a band on their own path growing. Hard rock and heavy metal isn't big yet like it would be in the 80s. It's also kind of smaller than it was in even 76, 77. I always talk about how all our big favorite bands of the 70s, the American ones, peaked around 76, 77, and then went downhill and were kind of missing in action in sort of 78, 79. So this is just kind of hanging around out there, you know, perhaps with Van Halen, right? This and Van Halen 1 and Van Halen 2 are kind of holding the fort for hard rock. But there you go. That's my number 1.
Yeah, like I mean, the conciseness of the songs. I mean, if you listen to the stuff before that, a lot of their songs they had that very the riff kind of building very very slowly until it
Right.
came.
Yep.
There was none of that here. It's like, okay, here's the riff. Now we're gonna we're into the verse.
Yep.
It did. They took the best, basically Mutt took the best elements of the band and just put them in a nice little package, something that was more mass appeal. People would grab onto it, and took them
Yeah.
from like basically like a club band to a stadium band.
Now that
Put
you
them.
say that, Hack, that's really interesting because the other thing that I just thought of this, but I think maybe 15 or 20% of the repetition has been taken out of the band too at this point. The type of repetition that's on Powerage, and then a different type of repetition that's on Let There Be Rock, and then even kind of a different type of repetition that's on the early stuff. And I think that's all been kind of like surgically slowly removed by Mutt. So Mutt must, I think he probably was a little bit of an influence in there. I'm just speaking off the top of my head, but it seems like some working on the songs took place a little more than usual. And like you say, they spent a lot of time recording it.
Three
So
months.
they had time. This is a band that, makes it look easy, but they try a lot of different things, AC/DC. That's the thing that people don't know. It's like in the studio, they try a lot of stuff to come up with that final, polished, simple jewel of a song.
Yeah, 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 for sure. My number one is probably most people's number one. And for me, this is the perfect album. Talking about Back in Black.
All right.
Back in Black is the perfect album, cover to cover. Every song on this record, for me, is great. The worst song on this record is still as good as most songs on their other albums, and I'm including Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution in that. Uh, Came out in 1980. It's like diamond in Canada, 20. I think you mentioned this already. 25 times platinum in the United States. These guys were behind the eight ball. They just lost their singer. They didn't know if they were even going to continue. Everybody knows the story. And I mean, Malcolm and Angus sit down and they come up with, by far for me, their best collection of songs, cover to cover, just their best collection of songs. And I mean, just Shoot to Thrill. There's so many highlights on this. Something is because Shoot to Thrill has got a lot going on. Like that's a really cool tune. Um, and then you got something it's just a hard drive and straight ahead, something like Give the Dog a Bone or Have a Drink on Me. It just there's too many. Everything on this record has got, and it is so locked in with groove. The drums and the guitars on this record, the production of it, the groove of it, they all sound great alone and they sound incredible together. The production on this record is part of the charm for me too. Again, it's got that tone that everybody is chasing. I don't know what else to say about this record. I mean, it's just so damn good. And this this put Mutt Lang on the map, and it certainly put AC/DC on the map. This, I mean, not that they haven't done anything since or before, but this is guaranteed AC/DC. Their longevity is that one record. Yeah, and Brian sounds great. For him to come in, off the street, literally, and hey, we got to record a record, write some lyrics, and he comes up with the lyrics to, Rolling, Shook Me All Night Long or whatever, on the spot. Yeah, fantastic. What can I say? Back in Black, not just the best AC/DC record, but I'd say for me, probably one of the top 5 records ever.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely love it.
Cool. Well, there's some good variety in those two lists. That's for sure. And we didn't have any of all this new stuff in it, right? I mean, for the record, I really like Black Ice from the later period, and I think Power Up's pretty cool. But I hated Rock or Bust for some reason, and these two I almost put them as a pair. I don't even know which songs are on each album because they sound so similar to me. I don't really see a lot of difference between these two records. But I don't think any of them. I probably would have had Black Ice showing up in the next 3 or 4 coming up for something newer, but Not at this point. Not
Ball
no.
Breaker starts off really well. There's a couple of really good songs on it, and then it
Mhm.
just sort of starts to trail off.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You know, as I love, is it the Fear? Is that
yeah.
the name of the song? Yeah.
The title track's really cool, and that's the
That'll
last song on it, Ball Breaker. That's really good.
there's some good tunes, and then it just, I don't know. There's no consistency there.
Yeah.
Stiff Upper Lip just sounds like, I don't know, man. It sounds like a bunch of seconds. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing there. I mean, they had the title cut, but then the rest of it is just kind of flat. Black Ice is not bad. That one is okay.
Yeah.
Black Ice is not bad. And the new one has its moments,
Yeah.
but
This just bored me out though. Rock or bust. Venticulated cover, whatever it's called.
yeah,
What I hated about this is I loved the advanced single Play Ball. I thought that was a great song. And then the album comes out and there's not a single song that to me even comes close to Play Ball on it. I hated that.
Rock and Roll Train.
Unfortunately, I did not like this album. Well, Rock and Roll Train is Black Ice.
Oh, that's
and that was the advanced single there. You're right. That was
song.
the advanced single, and that was a good song. But I like most of the rest of Black Ice too. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it's almost like I've said this about Black Sabbath in the Tony Martin era. It's almost like with these two albums that come, next to each other, right? Black Ice first, and then it's almost like all the ones that I happen to like the style of AC/DC doing all fell on this one, and all the kinds of AC/DC styles I don't like fell on Rock or Bust. So I don't know. I just really don't like Rock or Bust very much of it at all.
Rock the House. That's Black Ice too, isn't it?
I can't remember. Rock the House. No, it's on Rock or Bust.
It's on Rock or Bust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because those three records for me are just, I don't know what's on what record.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a blur.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, for Fly on the Wall for me is, I mean, when I went through and I listened to the catalog, I would say that's probably right there at the bottom. That one and Stiff Upper Lip would be the two. Yeah. But like all the other ones, they'll all have 2-3 good songs. Ball Breaker, Rock or Bust, Black Eye. They'll have a couple of good tunes, and then the rest just seem to be filler. And that's really been their thing for the last, I don't know, 3-4 records, 5 records, I don't know. But it's hard to keep it up, especially, there's not a lot of what you would call, classic bands that are able to put out stuff now that is even in the ballpark of what they put in their heyday. The exception to that rule for me, right off the bat, is Judas Priest. Their last record, and they're working on a new one apparently, but their last record, Firepower, that I could not believe how good that was. That for me is on par with Screaming for Vengeance. But there's not a lot of bands that are able to do that, for whatever reason.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, so people in the chat, let me know what your top 5. I see a lot of hate for some records and a lot of love for others. So there's no right or wrong answer. We all hear things differently, but let me know what your top 5 is in the comments. What do we got? Anything you want to mention, Martin, coming up on your website or on your channel?
Well, let's see. On our YouTube show, The Contrarians, Marco and I usually do those together. We do solo shows. We've done some neat Patreon shows too. We recently had one go up on live albums where we talk about, man, the variety is probably at like 45 different live albums talked about in really intelligent ways. It was really a cool discussion. But we did that. We just did Queen Hot Space, which isn't up yet. We just had a regular show of the Contrarians go up where we pick, a contrarian choice of favorite album. And it was Gillan, and I picked Double Trouble. The next one up, I think, is going to be Motorhead, where I pick Another Perfect Day as my favorite Motorhead album. And then in terms of books, not much going on, but I just did get reprints in after being out of print for a long time of the Merciful Fate book, Black Funeral, Into the Coven with Merciful Fate, and Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. And those are selling really well. I only got 100 of each of them. I'm surprised. I thought everybody had them, but apparently not. So martinpopoff.com. Well, actually, not martinpopoff.com for those two, because I haven't told my web guy to even put them up. But basically, email me or Facebook Messenger me, and we'll sort it out.
Yeah, I have a link to Martin's website below, but as you just mentioned, they won't. Those two records, those two books won't even be on there yet. But
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, and we've got the Facebook for History in 5 Songs, my podcast, which one of those just went up overnight. That was the Recording Badly on Purpose episode, episode 116. And my email address is martinp@inforamp.net.
there you go. There you go. So folks, if you like this and you want to see more shows like this and you want to help support the channel, below in the description, I have links to Guitar Hack merch. I have hats like this. I have shirts. I have hoodies and mugs and so on. Those links are below. There's also a PayPal down there below. If you'd like to support the channel, it'd be much appreciated. If you do not follow me on Facebook, or if you want to be part of the Facebook group, those links are below, as well as my Instagram. And yeah, go ahead and check those out. That'd be much appreciated. I want to thank Martin so much. Martin, we do this about once a month. We'll pick a band and we'll just go through them. We got to decide who we want to do next, but we'll do that off air. I want to thank everybody for checking out the show. You guys absolutely rock, and we will see you next time. All right. Okay, there it is. All right. Cheers, everybody. Take care.